It's time for Recipe of the Day. The thing that surprises me most about me and my air fryer is how much I use it for side dishes. I seem to constantly be just tossing stuff in there to cook sort of hands-free off to the side while I'm using the stove or the oven for something else. Potatoes, of course, you just put them in there, little ones whole, little ones halved, cubed potatoes, whatever. I've even done enough for like hash browns for like 6 people. It seems too full, but I just put it in there with the seasonings and the oil, and every now and then I give it a little toss and I just keep letting it go. And they do eventually get brown. It's really miraculous. Now, potatoes are great in there, but also all kinds of vegetables, just like baby carrots, a bag of little trimmed baby carrots, toss them with some oil, put them in there for like 10 minutes. They are perfect. You really can't go wrong. And you definitely can't go wrong with asparagus in the air fryer. I'm going to tell you about 2 ways to do it today. One is just basic and one is wrapped in bacon. So for basic air fryer asparagus, you really want to look for asparagus that is of a medium thickness. I find that if it's really skinny, it just gets too crisp, like almost burnt at the tips before it's fully cooked through. So that's not ideal for this. And if it's too thick, it kind of gets a little too brown and bitter on the outside as well by the time it's cooked through and is the right sort of tenderness. So medium thickness is what you're looking for. You're going to get your air fryer preheating to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. If you forget to do this, that's fine. I forget all the time and it doesn't make a huge difference when it comes to the air fryer. So get it preheating if you remember, and then you're going to trim your asparagus. Now, the tip that people usually give is to hold it by the tip, the more floury end, kind of grip that end and then grip the opposite end and bend. And where it breaks is the natural toughness point. When it gets soft enough that it's going to break there, that is the more tender part. That's what you want. The end you discard. But I find it kind of fiddly and annoying to do that for every piece of asparagus. So what I tend to do is just do one and then trim them all at that point, or I just hold the whole big bunch of them in one hand and then bend with the other hand and they just all snap where they want to snap. So that's much easier. Then you're transferring the asparagus to a medium-sized bowl with a teaspoon of olive oil, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. Give that a toss around. Now you can just do this in the basket of the air fryer, but I find that olive oil, when you drizzle it in, tends to drip right down through the grate into the bottom of the air fryer. Then it's not coating the asparagus. By using that bowl first, we're making sure that the asparagus all gets coated before it's going to hit the heat in the air fryer. Then open up the air fryer and pour all that asparagus with the seasonings into the basket there and toss it around to distribute them pretty evenly. They will overlap a little bit. We're using a pound of asparagus here. They're going to overlap a little bit, but for the most part, you want them in a single layer. Then you put that back in there and it cooks for 5 minutes. So that's 5 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. After 5 minutes, open it up and use a fork to pierce into one of the asparagus stems. It should be fairly tender as it goes in. If it's not, go for another 2 to 4 minutes. Then transfer it to a serving plate, and I really like to sprinkle a little bit of coarse salt on there. It's just a really nice little bit of salty crispiness to add to the asparagus at the end. So that is just your average weeknight asparagus. Then if you want something a little fancier, you can wrap it in bacon. Now, I will say right off the bat that the recipe calls for medium thick cut bacon. That just means like a regular bacon, medium. However, I do find that it gets crisper if you use the thinner cut. I prefer that for this recipe. The medium will work, like regular cut bacon is going to work, but I find the thinner a little bit better. Don't use the thick cut bacon. By the time it crisps up, the asparagus is not going to cook at all. So that is definitely not what you want. Now, for the amount here, we're actually going to be bundling the asparagus into little bundles of 3 to 4 stalks each and then winding one strip of bacon around that. So the ideal here is, again, that sort of medium thickness asparagus, and you want about 24 to 32 stalks, and that's going to give you 8 bundles, which is just the right amount to fit into like a standard air fryer. 8 bundles of 3 to 4 stalks of asparagus, and then you serve 2 bundles per person, so everybody's getting 6 to 8 pieces of asparagus and 2 slices of bacon. So you're going to trim the asparagus the same way we talked about before, and then get them into those little bundles of 3 or 4, and then one strip of bacon is winding all the way around them, and then you're arranging them in the air fryer basket. Don't preheat it first here because you're kind of wrapping as you go, and you're just going to arrange them in there, and you don't want them to cook unevenly, have some of them start before the others. So wrap a bundle in bacon, put it in. Once they are all wrapped up and laying in a single layer in your air fryer basket, you put the basket into the air fryer and set it to 390 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going for about 10 minutes. You see, this works out kind of perfectly. The asparagus take a little bit longer because they're in bundles, and we want them to take longer because we want the bacon to have time to crisp up, you see? And I'll just say, you maybe noticed that we didn't put any salt or oil on the asparagus, and that is because both salt and fat are going to come from that bacon. But if you wanted to, you could have oiled them lightly and you could have salted them or seasoned them with like garlic powder or something. That would work as well. That is pretty much it. When the asparagus are tender and the bacon is crisped up, like I said, about 10 minutes, you use some tongs to carefully take them out of the air fryer basket and put them on a plate lined with paper towel. Some of the fat from the bacon will drain off onto the paper towel, and then when it dries, it is easier for the bacon to crisp up a little bit more as it's cooling just slightly, and then you're serving right after that. Okay, I will put links to both of these recipes in the show notes for this podcast episode, or head to cookthestory.com/ROTD, and that will give you the link to the bacon wrapped asparagus. But from there, you are on the Cookful and you will see the link to the regular asparagus at the air fryer, or just go to thecookful.com and search for asparagus there. The search functions on both of my websites work really well. So whenever you're looking for anything, you can just click that little search button and search for what you need, and it will take you there. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, recipe of the day. I hope you have a wonderful day. Let's get cooking.